What up? Host Eric here. Host Talking with Famous People. And when famous people talk, people listen. Famously. I'm very tired right now. I didn't sleep very much last night. I kind of tried to sleep all night. But eventually I gave up playing Taciturn and the Tossy Turns. And I just started live streaming. Just got up, took a couple of Adderalls, started live streaming. But I'm still tired. I don't have a whole lot of verve. I need a bucket of verve. I need a bucket of verve and a knapsack of virility. One knapsack's worth of virility, please. That's how you buy virility in bulk. You buy by the knapsack. Knapsack, it's sometimes called. Hobo suitcase. This is my hobo suitcase. It's a stick. At the end of the stick, it has a handkerchief tied around. And inside of the handkerchief are some goods and items. Items and goods, goods and items. Items and goods for me. Items and goods, goods and items. Items and goods for free. What's wrong with Eric? I've been a STEMI like 10 hours or something. Feel STEMI. I feel STEMI and I feel, I guess you'd say, a muddle of roo-rise. Of course, naturally, emotions, which include SI, basically, are summed up as rye, ree, row, and roo. And, it's difficult to manage all four of those things. Rye, ree, row, and roo are, if you're getting into bed or something, it's very rye. Rye. But the bath is more like a rye, ree, row. Roo. Thanks. That's my super nice friend picture. Hi. Hi, guys. It's me, Eric. I am just loving the enthusiasm here. I am thinking this is going to be a special group. This is going to be one we're all going to remember for a long time. My name's Tabitha. I'm big, I'm bold, and I'm beautiful. But please do not stare at my tits. Okay? For new groups like this, a new class, just starting out, there's a little teaching technique I like to use to remind my students here not to stare at my tits. It's pretty important. It is, because I just don't like that. I'm tired of everyone constantly checking out my ass, staring at my tits, and undressing me with their eyes. Okay? I'm tired of it. I've had enough being objectified. I'm big. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. I'm big. I'm bold. Womanhood. I'm big. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. I'm bold. I'm strong. Womanhood. I'm big. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. I'm big. I'm bold. Womanhood. Big. Bold. Beautiful, stop staring at my tits. I'm big, I'm bold. Womanhood, going to a vaginal bud, swoosh, splash, party. You just better bring a towel. Time for a vaginal blood, sploosh, splash, party. Yeah. I'm hot. I'm fierce. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. I'm big. I'm bold. Womanhood. I'm big. I'm hot. I'm strong. I'm sexy. I'm womanly. I'm soft. I'm good. Womanhood. Yeah, I'm big and I'm bold and I'm sexy. I got big old titties and ass cheeks sticking out to the face to the back cheeks. Stop checking them out, you. Okay. So, welcome. Welcome to your first university class. I'm Tabitha. I'm going to be your professor this semester. A lot of you come here with some deeply held wrong political ideas, okay? So let's just get this right straight out of the gate. In this classroom, we do not value misogyny. So remember, yes, of course, I'm strong. I'm a bold, beautiful woman. But don't stare at my tits. I know I've got an extremely low-cut shirt on. I've got heaving, massive racks of cleavage. But hey, you stop looking at my tits right now. And my ass. Both cheeks. Both cheeks are off limits to you, mister. All the males in this class, sit in the back, please. Just go sit in the back. I'm tired of getting raped by your eyes. We're going to learn what it means to be ashamed of yourself for being a man. Okay? Welcome to Cis Straight Male Shaming 101. This semester we're going to learn how to shame people who have different ontological markers than us. We're going to shame the living hell out of them. You, Sky Gear, you look like you have a penis. Why are you constantly wanting to rape everybody? Why? All of you men in here, maybe you need to go home and think hard on this question. Why are you constantly raping everybody? You know, I came into work today and there was a gentleman who was rude to a young lady working at the coffee shop. And I said, "Hey, that's rape." Everyone was confused, but I wasn't. Well, Raphael, I see you are learning something today, aren't you? Now, look, students, what I want you to do is look at what it looks like when one of the patriarchy finally wakes up. What are you going to hear from a woke man's mouth? An acknowledgement that they are fundamentally very, very rapey and evil. Hi, Kankin Krishna Sarampagu. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have here a beautiful woman of color, and she is so welcome here. So for those of you who are cisgendered, straight white males, maybe show a little bit of manners and respect and get up from your chair, go sit in the back, and let this lovely, young, diversity box of diverseness sit in the front row. There's one thing I love more than anything else. It's diversity. Whenever I have two of one thing, I want to trade one of them in for something divergent. That's good, Raphael. Level 100 is a good starting point. Now, the thing is, to be properly aligned, you also need to have level 100 hating yourself. Both level 100. Then you're probably understanding that, okay? Please watch ContraPoints if you ever think about this. Listen, I'm so tired of having people like Tiny Man in here mansplaining to me about what it means to be a woman. Tiny Man 66, you will never know what it means to really be a woman. You'll never feel the pain of childbirth. You'll never be raped by people by their eyes all the time like I am. Somebody on the bus today, they were staring at my tits. I'm sure of it. He was trying to pretend like he was looking out the window, but I could see he was looking at my titties. So I stood up right there on the bus and said, "Hey, rapist!" The elderly gentleman said, "Me? Yeah, you old pervert! Stop staring at my tits!" "I'm blind," he said. Likely story. That's, men are rapists and liars. This guy had to be 98 years old, and he's still staring at my tits. Well, what we're going to do as a class project this semester is we are going to find statues that are up in public that are statues of men. Okay? So if we see a statue of a man, why do we want to pull that down? Why? Who can help me? Who can help me understand why we want to reclaim our history? Why do we have to take it down? Because those patriarchal rapists don't deserve any statues. Okay? Yes, I am teaching gender studies. That's true, Raphael. Raphael makes a great point. Women's tits matter. But we should also point out, Black people's tits matter more. And most mattery tits of all are mixed gender, mixed racial, just as deviant as possible, okay, from anything familiar. I want statues up of people like, good people. People like civil rights advocate Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez is a good man. Why was he a good man? Because he was a working class Mexican. And they're the most respectful of women of all. Yes, you got it right. You did, except we don't say woman, okay? Let's talk about our language. Let's talk about choosing to speak correctly, okay? So, what I hear a lot of boys out there doing is they're talking about women, but they're calling them girls. That's not okay. They also shouldn't call them women. What does woman mean? Well, man. Am I some sort of subset of a man? No. Seriously, ContraPoints is a really developed E&P educator about social justice and gives you information so you're up to date. I'm way past up to date on social justice stuff. I'm a debate coach, so I'm as far out ahead of the curve on social justice arguments as possible. Like, I can inform you that in about 4 years, people will stop arguing about identity politics. Those arguments no longer work in debate. There are no good arguments in favor of social justice. There just aren't. I mean, it's not like... Because the thing is, the word social justice doesn't mean social justice at all. As
those words have been co-opted by people who are opposed to social justice to pretend as though their opposition to social justice is a good thing. Yeah, I think Raphael's an IT teacher. What am I looking for? Oh, yes, coffee. Getting my cup of coffee. I am so unbelievably woke. What I learned at the university recently was that apparently I'm responsible for all sorts of horrible shit that I have no recollection of ever doing. I didn't realize it. Now I see. I am a horrible, awful, racist, rapey person. Why? I'm a straight white male. It follows logically. You're like the Eileen of Germany. Raphael's also from Germany. Kankin Christian Summer for you. Maybe he should date Eileen. Why don't you date Eileen, Raphael? Get your poke on. Yeah, get your hump on, dog. Get a little bit of the old. You live in the same country. That means she's like 15 minutes away. Raphael's thinking, oh yeah, righteous. Maybe I will go get my poke on. I'm Raphael. I'm in Germany. I'm gonna use my penis on a woman. Oh yeah. Like that, Raphael. Like that. Or just like that. I'm big. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. I'm big. I'm bold. Womanhood. You know, at first I kind of thought this whole transgender thing was silly, but ever since I've incorporated it into my ontology, I realized I was really missing out. Since I've become a woman, I have it hit me like a bolt from the blue. Oh, what was I thinking? Baby showers are fun. I can't believe I didn't enjoy these before. Now it's just like, oh my God, baby shower. Also, I realized being a woman has given me a unique opportunity to hold a monthly vaginal blood splash party. And you're all invited, okay? Just a word of warning. Bring a towel. It gets a little messy. You know. And as a prize, because we're having some contests and some games at this party, obviously, as a prize, the person who performs the best at the various games and contests will be permitted at the end of the vaginal blood splash party to slake their thirst on my man seed. Oh, no. I'm not holding a split splash party. Last time I did that, 7 people died. For me, it's sploosh or nothing. I mean, splishing is just total disaster. No, me. I am a woman and a man concurrently, okay? I'm a woman ontologically. But at the end of the party, when you're slaking your thirst on my man seed, well, that means you'll be getting it out of my penis. So, yeah, that's a pretty good deal. Somebody's going to walk away there with a belly full of man seed. me and Boutros Ghali, King of Christian Summer Purdue. I've never been compared before by anybody to Boutros Ghali. What makes you make that comparison? It's an odd person to reference. Hi, Kiara Louise. Would you agree with everybody else that I remind you especially of Boutros Ghali? So are you offsprings going to be metaphysical, Eric? I have one child, and she's a physical type. She's an ESTP. She's a sensor. I thought she was an ENFP until I learned more about cognitive functions. Former UN Secretary General, I think. Let me look it up. Boutros. So why do you have two Boutroses in your name? Isn't one Boutros enough? Yeah, Boutros Ghali. Okay. Boutros Ghali was an Egyptian politician and diplomat who was the sixth Secretary General of the United Nations. He was Secretary General from 1992 to 1996. Hey, Jason Blood, I don't have to be a woman to have an offspring, okay? Now, granted, I have to be a woman to pass what's known as a uteral stone or a fetus into a baby, but I got to pass a uteral stone. If you get pregnant, go to the hospital and say, I'm really backed up. I need to pass something through my uterus. You can see it's got me all inflamed with largeness. It's got me gravid with child. Gravid with child is such a great expression, you know. You can be gravid with something else too. I'm gravid with anticipation, like you're about to burst. All of my children are from lands that I have never visited. How did they get from me into their mother's wombs? PT is going to be my new brand of tea that looks like pee. You know what you should do is you should pour your PT into a petri dish. What does it mean to be FB blind? That I'm not able to understand people's emotions? No, that's not what it means to be FB blind. It means that you don't care or realize the extent to which people are going to have varying perspectives on you based on your behavior. So people with FE in like the third slot or something are very cringe prone. Like if somebody does something embarrassing or awkward, I'll be very cringy about it. Like, I can't watch this. This person's being awkward. But FE Polar doesn't have that experience. That's one thing to say about it. I mean, it's like you look at somebody like Cameron, he's pretty good socially, but he's still definitely FE polar. He'll talk about, when he talks about FE, he almost always talks about it as being manipulative, which of course Very rarely is FE actually manipulative. It's just that if you don't understand it at all, I wish I could expatiate. Is that a word? Expatiate? Speak or write at length or in detail. Thank you. Thank you for adding to my vocabulary. Expatiate. I'm constantly expatiating, aren't I? I'm an expatiator. Gravid with turgid prose, the host expatiated on endlessly. That's a good word, Jason Blood. You get 5 points for introducing me to that word. I'm surprised I didn't know that word already. It seems like a straightforward enough word, but I never even heard it. I am a chronic expatiator. I am. Sure. No. Look, Raphael, it is true that we describe other people as cringy, but being FE means you're the one who's cringing because you're embarrassed on their behalf. Sci-fi-gy? Sifigi? All right. I'll Google Sifigi. No, it's not. It's not a word. Home. Home. Define. Oh, it is a word. You're right. A conjunction or opposition, especially the moon with the sun. The planets were aligned in syzygy. In astronomy, a syzygy is a roughly straight line configuration of 3 or more celestial bodies in a gravitational system. Ah, interesting. You spelled it the same way previously. Oh, no, I see. I see. Well, that's true, Raphael. If you exclude from the matter attentional manners, that's if you take a sort of logical normative position on it, it would seem as though you shouldn't care what other people think so much. But really, that's just a FI cognitive function bias that's being impelled on people. I mean, here's the thing, Skygear. It's possible once you get used to the sloppy prose. $80 pages of exposition. I mean, look, I've been thinking a lot about fiction writing lately because I've been listening to fiction books on Audible. I bought one for me to listen to by myself, so I'd have to wait for Rachel to keep listening to the book. I got a different fantasy book by this fantasy author I like called L.E. Modisette. I've read a lot of his stuff before, but I didn't ever read this one series. So the Korean or something like that. Korean cycle. Anyway, I was struck by something about fiction writing yesterday when we were listening to the Robert Jordan novel. So, fiction, like anything else in life, ends up um, being parsable through the basic concepts of debate. Namely, you've got frames and you've got nodes. What I mean by that is in this book, there's three female characters who are trying out to get to be part of this like magic using woman organization. It's all women. They all have this special power, and they join this organization called Tarvalin, and they have to follow certain rules, and they have to swear oaths to not use their magical powers to kill people and stuff like that. Anyway, as part of their process of getting into this organization, there's a thing you have to go through to become an accepted, and it's these silver arches you have to walk through them, and they take you to other lives that tempt you to stay in those other lives, basically. So the first female character went through this process of becoming an accepted, walking through these arches, and then after that part of the story was done, it occurs to me that okay, there's probably two more of these things to go through here. Like we've heard now, there's Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine. The first one who went through the arches was Nynaeve, and so we got to see what happens when you go through the arches in that chapter. Then several chapters later, it was Egwene's turn to go through the thing, and I was like, okay, this is just a node. So it's like I get the concept of the arches and what they do. I get what happened with Nynaeve, and I get that there's going to be equivalent things, though different, for Egwene. So it's just a node. If I were left to my own devices, I might skim through that node really quick. Like I've already got what place this event and what's going to happen here plays in the story. But the thing was, when it got to the part where Egwene went through the arches, the author was smart. He included a variable this time that made the arches unstable. In other words, Egwene had a ring in her pocket that was unexpectedly interacting with the magic of the arches and causing problems. So it added a level of suspense that was a new vector while executing the second example of the same node. And then the author chose not to tell the story of the third girl going through, except indirectly, as she's relating her experience to the girls that they did tell a story of. So it's the same sort of thing as in debate. Debate, you've got a frame and you've got blocks. In a fiction book, you've got frames and you've got blocks, and the blocks are characters or action, basically. It's either developing character growth and character arcs, or you're advancing the plot. So the thing to do, of course, is you need to have advancing the plot reveal character arcs as well. So like in that instance, the character made sure that the author made sure he didn't just leave us in a node which was already predetermined without anything interesting to want you to, if you just think, okay, I get that Egwene needs to go through this thing, have the same kinds of experiences so she can be accepted. And if I want to be fully informed, I'd find out what those experiences were too, and for Elaine too, in full. But once you get the concept of it, that okay, he's just going to have them face their fears and stuff, and make sure that they aren't tempted to stay in those worlds. So that's the idea of the test. So in order to keep it continuing to move the plot forward while also just doing the character development, the author needed to include that additional plot vector into the second telling of the arches, and then chose to not tell the story of the third arch, as they said, except indirectly. It's the same thing with everything in life. It's all about frames and nodes, or blocks, if you want to call them blocks. The thing is, take what Ken Krishnaswamy Prabhu is saying, though, is also very much a second slot FE interpretation of FE. So my FE is not concerned with whether or not I create conflicts. It is concerned with whether or not I'm blamed for that conflict, or people perceive me to have won or lost that conflict, or so forth. Well, Raphael, most people with FE somewhere other than seventh generally don't need to have a lot of shit called out, because they're attending to those matters consciously or more strongly than you are anyway, most of the time. So, like, I'm probably the first one to know when I've done something cringy, when a joke has failed or something. I go, but I'll be aware. I don't need somebody else to point that out to me, right? I can tell. Yeah, you're an INTJ, Raphael. After I concluded a couple days after I typed you, I was like, after interacting with you, talking to Rachel about it, we both said, you're an INTJ. You got to be. Okay. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Re, Ri, Ro, and Ru, which are the expressions of the subjective realities of life. Now, Ri is native mostly to going to sleep. So if you are going to sleep, the most likely time when you're going to evoke Ri, 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 Ri. Ri, 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 Ri. That's a sleepy sound, right? It's a settling in sound. But it's also like purring for a cat. It usually represents, cozy, comfy sleepiness, but sometimes it can represent like stemmy. It gets stemmy like it did last night, where I'd lie in bed and I go turn back for go. You don't want to make any kind of reference. As I'm describing my night last night, I must have said Ryrie Rover 50 fucking times. Sometimes, like when I lie in bed and I'm having trouble falling asleep, I can be quite loud about it. I was out here with just me and the cat, so I have to worry about bothering Rachel. And as I'm kind of rolling, trying to get comfortable, just if somebody were to see me, say, what is that person doing? But does the polar function deliver under the premises of everyone has the person's child function? Your polar function is not a very useful function for you, no matter what. It's just not very useful. Your best case scenario is that you have a friendly relationship with your feelings, or your 7th slot thing. Okay. So for me, I have a fairly friendly relationship with my FI. I get to have FI feelings about the cat and about Rachel and and then we have limited amounts of like FI time. And then we're back to normal life where we're not worrying about stupid shit like that. But I like FI because it's it's been afforded its proper due place in my life. I don't disrespect my own feelings anymore like I used to, although I can still be capable of agreeing to things that aren't in my interest or something like that. But you really notice FI polar when, in a couple of different ways. It's like I realize now that the way I am with people in general, with my sort of, if somebody wants to roll up on me, quote unquote, on the internet here, I am likely to roll back over them, no problem. Like, oh, the hell you will, and then I just start, schooling the shit out of them or whatever. Well, that's an example of FI polar. It's an example in two ways. One, it's an example because being FI polar in part means a very real and deep and almost unshakable humility, because in some way I can never believe in my own value except by having others affirm it, which is a very childlike kind of frame of reference. But I mean, look, introverted feelings is about your relationship to what's important to you. The matters that are concerning to FI are things like protecting your in-group. So I'm going to take measures to prevent my child from hurting themselves while I'm teaching them to ride a bike. But I'm not going to take measures to prevent the neighbor's kid from hurting themselves while they're learning to ride a bike, because that's the neighbor's responsibility, not mine. And because I don't care about that kid as much as I care about my own. When Rachel and Delilah were roller skating on Father's Day, I asked Rachel to put on a helmet because I was trying to do harm prevention, because I worried about her a little bit. I'm a little worried about her crashing or something, So, but I didn't ask Delilah to put on. Actually, I did suggest it, but she, no, I'm not wearing a helmet. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not so much worried about Delilah hurting herself. FI then has some awareness of propensity for accidents too. Like, it's not that I love Delilah less, it's that I'm not as worried that Delilah's going to crash. And I'm confident that if Delilah does crash, she's going to successfully twist herself so that she's not terribly hurt by the crash. She picked up roller skating really fast. I mean, she's in the ESTP, so she's pretty tall for a girl. She just started roller skating, which is already doing it quite well, which is surprising because things like that are normally not things you can learn as an adult, really. But maybe that's just my take on it because it's an SE thing. The thing is, whenever you're talking about your seventh, you should also be talking about your second and your third. So being FI polar means being TI tool and being FE third. FE third means that on that vector of thing, feelings, the subjective positionings of others, that to the extent that I attend to subjective positionings, I attend to them for selfish purposes. Third slot's the most selfish. So third slot extroverted intuition might be called I talk, you listen. But third slot extroverted feeling is I perform, you critique. basically. I don't want to see your art. I don't care about your ideas. I don't want to I don't want to listen to your music. Blah, blah, blah. I perform, you're the audience. That's third slot FE, sort of. It's true for ESTPs as well as ENTPs. Those aren't real words, Sky Gear. Bing, sing, finging, ing, ping, ting, ding, angling, minking. That doesn't mean anything. Oh, wait, no, I got it. It means coconut sauce with chicken nuggets. It's in Thai, I believe. It looks like Thai language. It means, may I have some more cottage cheese, please? What can we do to increase the popularity of cottage cheese? I feel like I'm letting cottage cheese down. It's so good, but people don't really respect cottage cheese anymore. So what you said is wrong. I'm not sure what you were trying to say there exactly. I addressed the topic you brought up without really addressing your point because I wasn't quite sure what your point was. FI child want to feel good? Does FI polar try to deliver that to anybody else? Like FI child? I would say the thing is, it's not necessarily the case that I'm trying to make you feel good when it was my FE third slot. It is the case that I'm trying to impress you in some way or have you perceive me well. That doesn't necessarily mean making you feel good. If I did a very serious piece of work that was depressing, but you felt as though it, ignobled the species or something. It made the species more noble. It or had some value like that, then you might respect me, but not have been made to feel good by my performance. So I guess I would say having you impressed with me feels good to me. Does it feel good to you? I don't know. That's something I'm not sure about. So Aaron says with FI in the third slot, he cares about being authentic to himself. He can't pretend to be happy or to like it. I can't pretend to be happy either. I don't think I pretend to like people. It's pretty rare that I dislike somebody enough to. So what's better, being impressed or being bored? I mean, it depends on whose perspective you're talking about. From my perspective, it's better for you to be impressed than bored. From your perspective, I don't know. From my perspective, if you are impressed by me, then I've successfully shaped your perceptions in the ways I want to. Whereas if you're bored with me, then I've done a poor job with your attention. I like being the recipient of people's attention. Everybody's here, all 14 of you who are here are affording me something that I value a lot, which is you're willing to pay attention to me. And so, I don't like to think that somebody's been paying attention to me as I wished, and then I have failed to entertain them. What would make me feel better? Being impressed by somebody, I guess. But it might make me feel bad too if it's too impressive. I might feel kind of hatery about it. Second, Paulina asks, which function would you call the most visible for others in life? It's usually the second function. And the reason for it is, well, a tool function is the easiest to understand. I get what TI is and what you use it for very clearly. And I get that it's something you use. It's not who you are. Whereas extroverted intuition is my dominant function, but if I were just coming new to cognitive function and typing myself, I would say, well, I'm incredibly logical. It's like I'm obviously an INTP or something like that. But the problem is I do understand TI and how it works as a tool better than I understand any and how it works as a tool in some sense. And also, it's because it's turn off, turn on rather than constantly on. It's easier to draw distinctions about it. Because I can talk about what is it like when I'm attending in ways that don't include TI versus what is it like when I'm attending in ways that do include TI? What is it like when I'm attending in ways that don't include extroverted intuition? In that instance, you're talking about introverted sensing. So when I'm not using extroverted intuition, I'm using introverted sensing primarily. I'm taking a bath, going to the bath, self-care stuff. But that's one of the reasons why people self-identify with their tool function. And other people might identify them as such as well. It's additionally the case that that if you're talking about somebody else, if they have an extroverted tool function, then you're likely to mistake them as an extrovert. If they have FE as a tool function, then they're going to seem like extroverted feelers at first. RW, is the chat dead or is it me? Well, I would say the chat is not going very fast. It's not as active as perhaps I'd like it or you'd like it to be. But it takes some time to accrue 20 some odd people or so, which is about the max I get these days, it seems like. And, we're up to 14 now. Depends on who's in here as to how chatty they're being. And I agree with you that I like the streams best when the chat's moving, because then I have a lot of different things to look at and be prompted by. But I can carry just fine, even if that doesn't happen, or certainly until it gets more lively, I can usually carry just fine. That's the thing that gives me an advantage in YouTubing over, say, an INTP. I get more views if I challenge Queen's Gambit to a rap battle. I don't think Queen's Gambit wants to rap battle me. Just challenging him is good enough, or do I have to actually have a rap battle? Because there's no way he's going to agree to that. He won't even agree to talk to me. Uh-oh. I don't know if you're aware of this, Horse Mumbler, but the hilarious, crazy, stupid thing in all of this mess is that ventilators, the need for which was thrown out there, the justification for all this COVID bullshit, kill people. Ventilators kill people. Like something like the vast majority of people who ever get put on a ventilator for COVID die. It's a lot of doctors stopped putting any patients on ventilators because they just don't work. It doesn't help anybody. It kills them. You think he's ISTP, Queen's Gambit? I don't know. I haven't paid attention to him for long enough to even begin to type him. I don't really, whatever happens with Queen Gambit, I don't really feel like letting him benefit from his bullshit. I certainly don't want to play into it. But it's weird. It's like maybe a week ago or something, I was Googling something, trying to find some YouTube stuff, and a couple videos popped up that I'd never seen before. People typing me as things other than ENTP. That's, I think, maybe move one in the anti-Eric playbook is to make the statement. This is how you sort of declare war on Eric. Step one. First, you make a video insisting I'm not an ENTP. Because, of course, well, if I can call that into question, then I've really done something. Harder said than done. I mean, harder done than said, right? It's like somebody out there, there's a video talking about how I'm an INFP, this certain subtype of an INFP. But And I wonder what those people think after they're done making that video. It's like, do they realize they can't sustain that argument over the long term, or they just stop thinking about it at that point? It's not a smart move, right? The problem with starting an attack on me at the type and saying I'm not an ENTP is Spacey typed me ISFJ in a recent video, but I was pissed because he did not provide a single reason. How do you know if somebody feels impressed by you, Raphael? Yeah. Very obvious ISFJ. All right. I'm going to I wonder when does Spacey make that typing of me as ISFJ? It couldn't have been that recently. The thing is, you gotta remember he was with Sprite Monkey for a long time, who was probably pushing him hard to attack me. So I don't know. It depends how long ago it was. If it was recent, then who knows what he's thinking. All right. Hi, friends. Welcome to Talking with Fan People. My name's host Eric, and I want to talk a little bit about my type. So I'm an ENTP, if you don't know that. But I want to discuss how people mistype me. And Aaron pointed out here that Spacey typed me as an ISFJ about 2 months ago. Well, okay, first of all, I'm pretty sure Spacey would not stand by that typing of me at this point. The risk of trying to type me something other than an ENTP is you lose all credibility about typing statements at that point. As soon as you start saying I'm an ISFJ or an INFP or an ESFJ or whatever other kind of bullshit type you want to ascribe to me, then naturally you're going to lose all credibility about typology, because it's very difficult to imagine that I'm anything but an ENTP. And the reason it's so difficult to imagine is if I were an ISFJ, why are there no other ISFJs who are like me at all? If I were an ISFJ, what would somebody have to look like in order to be first slot extroverted intuition instead of fourth slot? Kira Louise says the only kind of reasoning he gave was people don't see Eric when he's on a live stream. There's no logic. Well, the thing is, what Spacey will tell you if he's being honest, and what Rachel will tell you if you ask her, and anybody else who knows me will tell you, is that I'm exactly the same in real life as I am on the live stream. I do not change at all. I'm the same person. This is not, in other words, this is not an act. This is how I am. Additionally, even if it were the case that I were to somehow behave more like an ISFJ when I'm not on a live stream, you still can't just wave your hand and dismiss the massive piles of data that I have that would suggest that I've done a lot more extroverted intuiting than any SI Dom ever would. Now, there's this other video I saw the other day on when I was Googling something about on YouTube I mean, I was on Google. I was Googling something, but it was about YouTube stuff. I don't even remember exactly what it was. But someone on the video where this guy types me as INFP, subtype of some sort. This is the risk we have when we start talking about subtypes. Oh, I'm an any subtype of an INFP. That's why I seem so any heavy. Even if you were to say, you might be able to argue on it. If you believe in subtypes, it would make some sense to say that I am a subtype of an INTP. That's more any heavy, right? But you really have to not understand cognitive functions at all to say that I'm a INFP of a certain subtype. My FI is clearly polar. It's hard to say exactly why. It's so clear. But if you know anything about cognitive functions, it should be pretty obvious that I don't have FI in the dominant slot. I'm not fundamentally about how this particular circumstance links individually to me. That's what INFP is about. I'm about how this particular circumstance is an example of a universal set kind of thing, and or applies or is defensible universally. It's totally the opposite frame. The other thing is, if you look at all the work I've done on cognitive functions and everything else, all the other work I've done in life, the most substantial work-like work I've done is ideational. It's generating abstract models to explain things. It's writing a grammar book, writing a critical thinking book. GA30 is pretty obvious. You can barely handle genealogy like who's your mother's, father's, dog's, best friends, sex buddies, fuckmates, dad's, owner's, granddad's, second cousins. Steve. It's Steve, right? Did I get that right? I'm pretty sure. Wait, you didn't say only best friends, so that's not clear. I think it's Steve. Oh, I missed the last part. Platonic partners, personal cyborgs, vampires, dad, son, sister. Yeah, it's Steve for sure then. So anyway, I suppose people will forever attempt to attack me by trying to muddy the question of my type in people's minds. Another example of somebody who would like to do that, probably very badly, is C.S. Joseph. The problem C.S. Joseph has, of course, is nobody who's spent any time watching me at all, any substantial amount of time watching me or engaging with me at all, thinks C.S. Joseph is an ENTP. Because there are a few things that we can put down as sort of rock solid, reliable truths of the world. I am an ENTP. That's one of them. No doubt about that. I'm the textbook ENTP. I match not only the process analysis from cognitive functions, but I even match the type descriptions. So for somebody like C.S. Joseph, he can't type me as ENTP because he and I are obviously different types. So he types me as ESTP. I understand his mistyping because he's painted himself into a corner now where he cannot he can't go back on his self-typing at this point without losing way too much credibility. Not that he deserves to have any credibility at all, really, frankly, but he's doubled down on his wrongness so many times now that he's stuck with it. He's gonna have to try to make it work, even though he's trying to use a feather duster to dig boulders out of the ground, you know. But Scott here, We currently have a travel moratorium to the Bahamas because a lot of people around here have been abusing the privilege to wear Bahama shorts. Holla back, Alan. Holla, 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 holla back. Holla back, my friend. Holla back. So yeah, people who mistype me, you're so wrong. And to share with you the truth of how wrong you are, I'm going to now temporarily mute this meow over here, like so, and I'm going to play you a very, very important song. I'm big, I'm bold, I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits, I'm strong, I'm beautiful. Womanhood, I'm big, I'm bold, I'm beautiful. Stop checking out my ass, I'm big, I'm bold. Womanhood. We're gonna go to a vaginal blue splash party tonight. Better bring a towel. It's gonna get kinda messy. I've got sass and verve. I'm hot, I'm fierce, I'm beautiful. Womanhood, big and bold. I'm hot. Stop checking out my ass. I'm big, I'm bold, I'm beautiful. For womanhood, I'm big, I'm strong, I'm sexy. I'm fun, I'm virgin, I'm full of life. For womanhood, I'm fun, I'm sexy. But don't stare at my tits. You can come to my vaginal blood blue splash party tonight. It's gonna be a mess. You better bring time, I guess, or else you get some on your dress at the vaginal blood blue splash party. Come on, everybody, RSVP to my vaginal blood blue splash party. Don't miss out. Don't be the ones who miss out on it. You'll regret that. Okay, thanks for being here. Goodbye. There, I made a little video. I'm going to put it up and publish it now. You were a part of it, everybody. You got to be a part of that video. You know why? Because I'm big. I'm bold. I'm beautiful. Stop staring at my tits. Okay, it doesn't matter how low cut my shirt. I don't care if there's a heaving sea of cleavage in front of your face. You are not to look at it. Yes, it's there on display, obviously intentionally displayed for people to look at. That does not mean it's okay for you to look at it. You stop looking right now. Your eyes are constantly raping me. Ow, 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 ow. It metaphorically hurts when you constantly rape me with your eyes. Okay, I'm sassy. I'm fun. I'm sexy. Womanhood. Stop checking out my ass. Yes, I have 2 ass cheeks, like everybody, okay? Yes, they're incredibly round and voluptuous. It doesn't make it okay for you to stare at them. There. Now I'm done with that. You think you know that song? Shoot by Salt and Pepper is great. Shoot is one of those songs. There's a lot of things in life that are like this, where it's like I've got all my like cool shit that I am interested in, like cool little things, right, in the world, and I'm just kind of isolated doing my shit over here, and then I'll watch some media, and somebody will have stolen my shit, like that movie Deadpool. I swear that movie, they stole my soundtracks. They got their soundtrack choices from my playlist or something. It's like I'm the one who's smart and clever and knows what a great song that is and bumps it in the car. You can't take that from me, Deadpool. That's a good one. Can't Fight the Seether. I forgot about that song entirely. I want to check that song out. The Baruch Assault. Let me see what it sounds like. I gotta mute here for a second. Can't Fight the Seether by Baruch Assault is a good song. There's been many years since I've heard this song, but it's good. I mean, I don't think Deadpool is a very ENTP character. Deadpool is, I agree with Swift Eagle. He's an ESFP or possibly ESTP. He's definitely a censor. Imagine everyone would always say the truth, every detail being correct. Would that be better than the world right now or worse? I mean, lying is wicked. So obviously, that which is definitionally immoral correlates with the bad, not with the good. You know, Rick and Morty stealing my jokes left and fucking right. I know that they just independently come up with their, same type of personality, same kind of age, same kind of background. They're gonna have similar jokes, but it frustrates me because it takes me back to the days when I used to be a full blast, like frustrated, hatery kind of guy a little bit. Like, why can't I have success and these people are having success and I'm not them? And it's so bothersome to me. I'm much less like that now, but this takes me right back to it. It's all about presentation. Well, it's not just all about presentation, RW. That's the thing. It's about consistency is what it is more than anything else. So, but listen, RW, I get that. Yes, obviously. I don't want to have this argument with you. Never mind. All right, RW, I get you. Rick is definitely an ENTP. Rick's as ENTP as you get. And he's what I would call a standard ENTP, not an especially unhealthy one. Consistency is what's necessary. Well, there's a lot of different things that are necessary, and they sort of correlate with cognitive functions. like most people with good NI, you look at the channel for a little bit, you get what it is as an entity. My favorite ENTP character in media, I like the girl with the pink ears, Louise in Bob's Burgers. I should sell TW if she's nice. There's a lot of things I should do. Well, the thing is, Alan Brian, is when you talk about consistency, what I really mean is attainment in the frame of identity. That's what NI provides. I was thinking about music, for example. I've been listening to that instrumental thing I have there over and 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 over again as I'm working on it. And the reason for that, and probably the thing that makes music so appealing to me, is that because of the durational aspect to music combined with the irreducibility of most of the components of the music, except for the lyrics, which are language that's reducible, means you don't understand a song or get it what it is or know anything about it until you have grokked it as an entity rather than understood it through some other process. In other words, you have to know intuitively your song. For me to know it intuitively, I have to know it experientially a whole bunch. So I attain NI about something and figure out what I think about it by listening to it 150 times so that my SI knowledge is so thorough of it that born of that thorough SI knowledge is an arrival of an NI understanding of the song as an entity that is either consistent with or deviates from its platonic form, you know? You think more people are lying or telling the truth most of the time? Telling the truth. People are mostly good. There are occasionally bad people, but yeah, most people try to do well, try to do good, try to be honest. Mostly they are. I mean, but those aren't ideas so much as they are engagements with the physical environment. No, not lying. Most people are not lying most of the time. Most people tell the truth most of the time. I mean, there's an inherent risk to any lie that the truth does not carry. You can be caught in a lie. You can't be caught in the truth. So there's always going to be an impetus to avoid lying simply for practical reasons, even if you don't buy the moral aspect of it. Lying is unavoidably at a disadvantage against the truth. So there's no reason for people to lie because it doesn't help them. It hurts them on balance. That's why lying is typically a sign of a non-optimal human being who's not healthy. Optimal human beings who are healthy don't lie much because it doesn't help them, and there's no reason to. I think what your ENTP wife is trying to say with those words is not that you should be less literal and more existential, though she may use those words. What she means is stop knowing and start deciding. This is the kind of shit sometimes I say to Rachel, you know. You need to decide what reality is. You don't know what reality is. You decide it. You make the reality you want. Okay. Now stop abdicating your responsibility to be an action type like me and not be a knowledge type like you. That's what she's doing. Okay. Just for the record. Marvell, as far as truth goes, there is a three-legged tool of truth. There are three aspects to any given communication that determine whether or not we afford a truth value of truth. So first, remember, when talking about truth, truth is a status that we either afford or do not afford to a statement. Any other use of the word truth is metaphorical, and we can't really make any arguments about it. If you say like, oh my God, that painting is so true. that you're just using the wrong word. That's all there is to it. It's not true or false. It's a painting. So you might say that a painting, though, conveys a lot of truth. That would also be a metaphorical use of the word. In a non-metaphorical use of the word truth, it's always applied to statements as being either true, not true, or no truth value. Axinos 7904 Hello. So regarding the three-legged test of truth, then, we determine whether a statement is true or not in three different ways. First of all, it depends what kind of statement it is. Statements that link directly to objective data are easier to determine the truth value of. If I say there's a Jack in the Box on the corner of Rosemead and Colorado Boulevard, you can drive to the corner of Rosemead and Colorado Boulevard and see if there's a Jack in the Box there. My statement is very clear as to what it's articulating. In other words, it's not a statement about which you need to do a lot of framework or interpretation or is subject to much interpretation. If I tell you there's a Jack in the Box restaurant on the corner of Colorado and Rosemead, there's nothing metaphorical about that at all. So you're talking about objective data. You're making a clear descriptive statement about objective data. In that instance, it's very easy to determine what the truth is. We're talking about what truth is and how one determines truth values. But real truth has to be discovered by the subject, and to create means to put it into the outside world, so truth has to be discovered itself. No, it doesn't work like that, Raphael, at all. So the thing is, it is not the case that the truth of my statement is discovered by anybody. Okay? My statement, remember we're talking about my statement. So my statement is there's a Jack in the Box on the corner of Rosemead in Colorado. It is easy to verify because it's a descriptive statement about objective data. Now, there are other kinds of statements. So before we go any further talking about truth, let's talk about what the other kinds of statements are. There are descriptive statements, there are predictive statements, there are prescriptive statements, and there are normative statements. And that's it. There are only four kinds of statements. There are also commands and questions, but those don't have truth values. If I tell you, put on your shoes, Raphael, that sentence has no truth value. Why? Because it's a command, not a statement. If I ask you, would you like some more cheese, Raphael? That question has no truth value. Why? Because it's a question, not a statement. We're talking truth, truth value, no truth value, false. Those are the three truth values. True, false, and no truth value. All right, so, Raphael, to explain further now, one of the legs, as I said, was objective data. If you're making descriptive statements about objective data, those are the easiest to verify the truth or falsehood of. Okay, well, that's what the nature of objective data is. Objective data, definitionally, is data which can be accessed equally by all parties independently. So the fact that the data exists outside of people, that the Jack in the Box is not within me physically, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's not even worth pointing out. Okay, so the second truth leg that we use is using words the same way. So one thing that a form of what I consider a form of dishonesty is what I call dissembling. And dissembling is a strategy in which you use words in ways that disallow successful argumentational work to be done. Successful argumentational work involves both parties agreeing to jettison aspects of a thing that are wrong and fix the aspects of things that are wrong. To acknowledge that a given position statement is standing or not standing according to the outcome of the argumentation done thus far. So we have to be using words the same way. If I want to define things in janky ways to give myself an advantage in the dispute, then I will try to do that. So in general, there's a heuristic that we use regarding definitions, which is this. Plain use or term of art. Those are the two vectors there. We prefer the ordinary definition of the word over some very specialized definition, all other things being equal. And also, we prefer a specialized definition when it's a term of art, because that represents the actual thing being defined better. What I mean by this is, if we're going to evaluate the word foreign in its normal usage, that means related to countries other than the United States. But if we talk about the term foreign policy refers to the policy of other countries. It refers to the policy of the United States towards other countries. It does not refer to the policy of other countries. France's policy is not foreign policy. That's France's policy. U.S. dealing with France the way the U.S. deals with France, that's foreign policy. So in that regard, this idea of using words in the same way is the second pillar of truth. If I'm using the term of art foreign policy and you want to dissemble by defining foreign and policy separately and insisting that it means it's the policy of countries, not the United States, rather than the United States' policies regarding those countries, well, you'll both be wrong and using it inconsistently as a term of art, but being consistent with plain usage. So in that instance, we have to just think and realize that what's appropriate is to use the term of art. The third leg of the truth pillar thing is intentionality. You can intentionally deceive somebody, willfully deceive somebody, without saying something that is factually false, and still be guilty of, if not lying, at least dishonesty. Look, the thing is about this question, Raphael, I am not advocating the position that truth is created. I agree with you that truth is discovered, really, and that when it appears that truth is created, it's because the creator of the truth is so good at ideating that way that he manages to discover things of significance, that really it's creation theater designed to distract the mind sufficiently to allow the creator of things to find that pop of something being discovered, not created. So what I would say, Raphael, for example, is if we were to use the word truth to include things other than statements, which, means we're getting into metaphor now, but let's go ahead and get into metaphor. We're using the word truth to apply to things other than statements. So what I would say, for example, is The Girl from Ipanema, if everyone's familiar with that song, is a song that was discovered. It inherently has a rightness to it, and the songwriter had to discover that rightness. It was not created. When I have a good song that goes correctly, I have to discover it. What I also heard the other day was an example of a song that only is half discovered. So I don't remember which one it is. It's either Someday My Prince Will Come or Someone to Watch Over Me. It's one of those two, okay? I was listening to that jazz standard in the car the other day with Rachel driving out of the pharmacy, and what I realized is the part that everybody knows is the only good part of that song, and that the other parts are all tacked on. I think it was Someone to Watch Over Me. Na 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 ba na 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 ba na 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 no ba na na da do na na ba na na. No, it must have been Someday My Prince Will Come, because I can remember the other parts of that one, and the other parts of that one are good. So it must have been Someday My Prince Will Come. It's got a cool main part that but the rest of the song is crap. It's like tacked on jazz garbage. So that's an example of somebody discovered the chorus and then created bullshit around it. Fairly common phenomenon. Sounds like a position an idealist would make. Idealist as in a person who believes in idealism. How can there be lies and truth if truth is created? Well, I mean, the thing is, the statement "truth is created" is an example of a statement we can evaluate the truth value of. Okay, so hi, Brynazal Bieber. I am fine. Thank you for asking. How are you? There are some truths that are created, which is to say, like a lot of these truths of cognitive functions and typology and stuff, they're created. It may be the case that it is inherently so that there's something to taxonomy there. So, for example, Raphael, if we're talking about taxonomy in the animal kingdom, you might say that the truth of the animal kingdom is that there's a bunch of different animals, and that the lie of the animal kingdom is that some of them are mammals and some of them are reptiles and some of them are Is that a lie? No, it's not a lie. It's a taxonomy. It's arbitrary, but it's referencing something real. So why are mammals all classified as mammals and reptiles classified as something different? Because they do seem to naturally represent a genuine set distinction. You can point to specific traits that mammals all share that no reptiles have, and vice versa. No, but Raphael, hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying, because you're still conflating language with reality. So note that there is a reality about mammals. Okay. And the reality is, if you encounter any mammal and watch them for long enough, you will see some member of that species put milk out of its boob into a baby's mouth. So we just want to limit that to that, right? But what happens is we sometimes forget which comes first, the horse or the cart. And if we insist that those things are mammals, and that means they must meow, 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 right? Then we're forgetting that the taxonomy is there to make the realities meaningful. The reality exists independent of the meaning, but the meaning is where the truth is found. And the meaning is not necessarily created. It could be discovered. That's fine. But it's not the case that it is true definitionally that mammals have boobs and put milk out. Okay. I could say, on the other hand, it's true definitionally that the moral agency confers on an individual a duty to respect negative prohibitions. I could say definitionally that's the case. I'd be right in the second time. If I said definitionally it's the case that mammals have all the things that mammals have, I'd be wrong in the first case. And the reason is because mammal is not a word that references symbols. It's a word that references non-symbols. Okay? But listen to me, Raphael. There are words that represent symbols, and there are words that represent non-symbols. Words that represent non-symbols are absolutely relative, but words that represent symbols can be relatively absolute. And the thing about understanding truth properly is to recognize that real truth is tautological. Okay? Real truth is tautological. We don't have to reference reality at all to know that a sentence is true when and if it's definitionally necessary. When the premises make the conclusion definitionally necessary, an argument is valid. The validity of something is a question about which we can determine whether a statement about the validity of something is true or false 100%. So it's completely objective. And to the extent that any party disagrees with the objectively so conclusion, they're wrong. So I say, if A, then B, and if B, then C, and A, therefore C. That statement is valid. That argument is valid. You might also say it's a true statement. It's a true conditional statement. If these things, then that thing, and these things, so that thing. In other words, you're making a statement that is absolutely true relative to the kind of thing being talked about, namely symbols that are about symbols, not symbols that are about non-symbols. If I have a symbol like validity represents something in the world, but it represents something in the world that's a quality of language, not something in the world that's a quality independent of language. So it's like when I make a statement about a mammal, you can check. If I make a statement about a specific mammal, like my cat, if I say my cat is not heavier than 40 pounds, okay, is lighter than 40 pounds. My cat weighs less than 40 pounds on Earth. That's a statement you can check the truth or falsehood of directly by doing a measurement of some sort. And in fact, in theory, with that kind of stuff, it could turn out to be a wash. Maybe the cat's exactly 40 pounds. It's not clear if I was telling the truth or lying or what, right? But that's a different kind of truth. That's a truth that's dependent on your measurements, okay? So truths that seem to be absolutely linked to physical realities, in other words, that you can be determined 100% based on checking some piece of objective data, are actually less solid truths than you might think they are, but still, that's one way of something seeming solid. The other kind of truths, though, are definitional and conditional. So when I make statements about what is necessarily so if meow and meow are so, then that statement is true if it's valid. Well, I'm trying to explain the different ways that people use the word truth kind of here, Alan Bryan. I'm not really making so precisely an advocacy as I'm saying to have a full understanding of truth, you need to have an understanding of how all the different ways in which people use the word, the ways in which they use it that are inconsistent with other ways, and the ways in which they are consistent with other ways. Okay, well, then in that case, you're making that's very different. If you're saying you're making a hypothesis, then you are making a you are positing a justification for something. You're positing that X is Y, Z. You know, it's like, or Z is because of X or something like that. And then you're testing that hypothesis with data gathering techniques that are supposed to be revelatory as to whether that hypothesis is true or not. Okay. But that's the sort of truth that I'm saying that's one kind of truth. For example, we know evolution's false definitionally because they managed to finally get a couple of those kind of tests in there so we can test some hypotheses, and they don't test out. So we know it's false. It's not a correct explanation. But if I say something like this, Raphael, no, there's not just one truth. If I say, look, if Jody's taller than Bill, then she's definitely taller than Mary because Mary's shorter than Bill. That's a true statement. No matter what. You don't have to look at Judy or Bill at all to know it's a true statement. You tell me why, Raphael. Why do we not need to look at any data at all to know that statement is true? And it's also created. Or is it? Yes, it is created, because all we're talking about there is the relationship between is grammar. We're talking about grammar. I didn't define height. I just related it to some other height. I said, if Bill is taller than Mary, then he's definitely taller than Sue because Mary's taller than Sue. We don't know. Maybe none of those things I said in there are accurately representing the various tallnesses of the people. Now, I didn't define their height. What I did was I took advantage of conditionality to create an absolute truth, whereas in the causal world, we can't do that. Okay, conditionality is what allows us to create absolute truths. All right, let me get you a document to help you understand this, Raphael. I got a good document I made on this stuff. I know I go fast. It's hard to keep up sometimes. I've been making these arguments, thinking about this stuff for such a long time. It's very fast for me. People who are newer to the arguments and to the thoughts, obviously it takes some time to process what I'm saying. It is a high level of analysis, very high level of analysis. So it's understandable. This is an interesting document. Okay. This is an interesting document. You guys might want to check this document out. It's like I make all these documents and lose them, forget all about them and stuff. Yeah, well, the thing is, intentionality is how you incorporate line by omission. If a person makes it clear that for them to fully and consensually engage in something, they need to verify that you're not Mia, let's say. And you don't have to say anything to deceive them. So we have to consider intentionality somewhat. Hypotheses are not true or false. True. They're tests, right? They're things that we test. The point is, and specifically about that horseman word, is that because it's a conditional statement, it's absolutely true. Because it's conditional, and the conditions that are articulated are definitional conditions rather than references to data points, we can call it absolutely true. And we can say it's a created truth, not a discovered truth. But that would be kind of wrong too. Because, in fact, what's discovered there is that the use of superlatives like good, better, best, or short, tall, taller, shorter. Those things which relate to things to each other indicate a comparison relationship. And those kind of comparison relationships can be easily enough determine the truth value of, usually, especially if it's a physical comparison. If I say, this remote is longer than this remote, then you know that we don't need to know anything about how long each of them are. We just need to see them side by side. All right. If I said one of these remotes is 7 inches long and one of these remotes is 5 inches long, we still don't have to measure them because we can tell which one's longer. And if we have those two pieces of information, so the thing is, I didn't discover the truth, though, okay? The reality is such that when I created a sentence relating to those two objects and held them up for you, I did so in such a way that the words conveyed by the sentence would be consistent with the data you saw. That doesn't mean that I discovered the truth. I utilized data to create a truth to talk about what truth is. So I did not discover the truth that this was longer than this. I created a statement, this is longer than this, in order to exemplify how language is used differently when I talk about different things. I mean, it shows you how the observer is king, ultimately. No matter what it is we're making statements about, we're making observations. So some of those observations are observations that appeal to data that you can see with your eyes. Some of those observations appeal to data you can hear with your ears. Some appeal to data you can smell or taste or feel. And lots and lots and lots of words don't appeal to any of those things. They appeal to the metaphysical side of stuff. In other words, they appeal to binary relationships between symbols and objects. In general, I tend to agree with Alan Bryan that, and with you probably, Raphael, that truth is actually discovered, not created. I'm an extroverted intuitor, but I fetishize and am jealous of NI people because they understand intuitively and naturally what I have to work so hard to get, which is less is more. Don't take a good thing and mess it up by making it do more than it's supposed to do. No mission creep. Let entities be what they are. But you intended to create some truth for us and used this truth and displayed it. Well, again, the thing is, what I did was I created a statement. I created a statement that was designed to be recognized as true and accurate by those who heard it. And that in order to do that, I had to link it to your eyes. So when I say this is longer than this, what I'm saying is I anticipate that when you look at these with your eyes, you will find that the thing you see is consistent with the thing I say. So for stuff like that, since we all have, it's a non-interpretive data entry point. People's eyeballs don't decide how long things are or what color they are after the data gets to the eyes. The data comes to the eyes differentiated from other data. The eyes pick up on that differentiation. So in that regard, to see something is to discover something because the information is coming into you unbidden. You're not necessarily seeking it out. If your eyes are open, you cannot help but see what your eyes land upon. So the thing is, if we're talking though about metaphysical, when you're dealing with physics in general, you're talking about how stuff that is concrete objectively in the physical world works. What happens if you drop two balls from a roof of something? Well, go up there and try it and see. And we can deduce meanings. We can create meanings or conclude that certain things allow us to know other things that we wouldn't otherwise know. When we're talking about metaphysics, though, it's different. Who supports BLM? I certainly don't. I don't support BLM at all. I think it's a horrible racist organization that should be shamed and belittled by everyone. With metaphysics, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that our meaning processing of the world requires us to lose high resolution data. If you're an FI user with SI, if you're an INFP, INTP, let's say a ISTJ or an ESTJ, if you're those things, what was I going with that? Oh, that's my train of thought. R. Diddy, 1889. You got me sidetracked a bit there, and I lost train of thought. Well, whatever, blah, 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 cognitive functions. Oh, that's right. Let me see if I can find that document I was looking for. Do you believe in miracles? Sort of. Sometimes. Would you like me to believe in miracles? I'm not entirely unwilling to believe in miracles. Let me see if I can find in this thing. Where's find? Control F, you say? Okay, fine. Page 43. All right. Page 43. Copy link. Page 43. Okay, so go to page 43, Raphael. If you actually want to have me give you as much information on this thing and answer your questions as best as I possibly can, then just instead of asking me a bunch of stuff about it and listening to me ramble on, basically just read from page 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 49. And that covers this topic quite a bit. And you're gonna be like, "Dag dog, you sure did cover that topic quite a bit. You big topic coverer, you." What you're gonna say after you're done with looking at it. I mean, nonstop dag dogs from now on. Okay, nonstop dag dogs. Don't be a dog, Dag, Doug. Don't be a dig dog, Dag, Doug. So again, I will tell you the page numbers that I'm talking about here. It ends on page 49 is the last page to it. And page 50 Yeah, which is 43 is the first page of it. So this explains how cognitive functions correlate with certain specific frames, like how that plays out basically. And also your mom's face, of course. I couldn't leave your mom's face out of the book, so this is where I put that. So after I used a sponge to sop up all the man seed from your mother's back, I said, "See you later. You made me feel dirty." She was sobbing. I walked away. It was a pretty fun afternoon. Sure. A little volatile emotionally, but you know, you really stuck it to him. You know, like you thought you wanted me to make love to you. Instead, you just got effed in all ways. That's how hateful I am. Also, I keyed your car just for good measure. Why? I'm just an awful person, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's not really a good reason. Okay. So what this thing says here, for those who would like me to read it out loud for them. Singularity, NI, preferability over exclusive alternatives, conclusive argumentation, irreducible truths, claims to attain finality, originality, NE, high ceiling, much potential. So this is like how these frames work in argumentation. High ceiling, potential for much greater impacts than known approaches, claims to attain magnitude, bypass, disadds, etc. Harm prevention and remediation, FI, relates to the status quo to intention, assumes solvency, claims to do the morally obvious. Representationalism, FE, evaluates a given position against the extent to which things mirror the general mores and standards of a given population of arguers, claims the middle ground. Relative absolutism, TI, the frame of disinterested calculus of word exchange, claims fairness is implicit to disinterest. Absolute relativism, TE, the frame of checking impacts against desired impacts, claims action ought to be predicated on likelihood of efficacy. Reliability, SI, the frame of overweighting consistency over time, the frame of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Claims the preferability of the devil you know. Execution, SE, the frame of talk is cheap, only action is meaningful. Deliberation is another word for hesitation, claims the ability to render other frames moot. So if you think about each of the 8 functions as representing a strategy of argumentation, that's what these look like. This is a very good document. Implicit frames. An argument in a debate round, like any verbalized argument, carries with it the frame that can be inferred from the argument. For example, if I say that we should exercise to keep our hearts healthy, one implicit frame, a set of facts that the statement presupposes are not in any dispute, is that maintaining health heart is good. The above statement uses numbers 3 and 6 from the table below as implicit frames. Preventing harm is good. Once it is established that harm is prevented, the worthiness of doing so is not questioned. The other implicit frame presumes that reasons linked to studies or data are more reliable than is personal experience in determining matters of one's own body and health. In other words, universality. NI. Every argument carries one or more of these implicit frames or values. Explicit frames. Explicit frames are those articulated as such. To articulate an explicit frame is to argue by the implicit value of relative absolutism. We set the status of Z as X for the purposes of this debate round, and thus never consider whether the event of the debate, and thus needn't ever consider it within the event of the debate, whether something Z might actually have the status of something else, not Z. This is so because contradiction violates the implicit frame in which the discourse occurs, that of relative absolutism, in which a given claim carries with it the burden of its meanings. In other words, if we agree to call Z by the status X, then we are both stuck with the implications thereof. Of course, our opponents can use their own statuses that differ from ours, and the debate then involves which of the conflicting statuses ought to be preferred and why. This answer is determined by way of a disinterested calculus of argumentation actually made in the round. How many unsaid but obvious things might suggest to a third party judge that reality differs from the reality described by the determinate arguments on the chain? Oh, how many unsaid but obvious things might suggest to a third party that reality differs from the reality described by the determinate arguments on the chain. But the judge is there to judge the debate, not the not the precision with which the debaters are describing reality, quote unquote. Of course, only in when you're talking about objective data that comprises physical objects in the world can you treat them as such. Where statuses are exclusive, only one will, quote, win the chain, unquote. And the evaluation to that does not check against the physical world. We determine who wins against other arguments made, not against anything else, including unspoken arguments, facts not argued, consensus outside of the round, our personal opinion, or even the objective truth, quote unquote. Such is the engine of relative absolutism, TI. The physicalities are relative, words subject to contextually specific definition. The meanings, though, are absolute within the frame and sticky beyond it in time. This book displays an implicit and somewhat explicit frame of relative absolutism. This work rejects empirics in favor of reason and argues that the legitimacy of doing ideational work of this sort is at least equal to that of empirical research and substantiation, especially when addressing issues of human consciousness, or especially in psychology. Many people, particularly those expressive of an absolute relativism frame, this sounds crazy. Such people, TE users, TE folk might find it downright anti-intellectual to not concede the superiority of peer-reviewed, double-blind, empirically supported, heavily hedged conclusions. To negate the primacy of such is to negate science itself, and that's crazy. It's not, though, at all. That's the thing. Is one of the things I hope to do with this book is to, stop that, put an end to that nonsense. Right. The fact that there are shit tons of people in the professional psychology community who are sold on the idea and try to sell the idea that the Big Five is the only accurate personality model. That's just insanity. Let's look a little bit more at the frames. Harm prevention and remediation. The key aspect of this frame to note for argumentational purposes is that it assumes all of the following: the need to act, the legitimacy to act, and the efficacy of the action. The presence of suffering, or the perceived presence of suffering, is sufficient to prompt action, and those who don't ascribe to this understanding are guilty of callous disregard, active ill will, or some fundamental character flaw that leaves them unable to comprehend the significance of the suffering. For the Execution. Execution as an implicit frame doesn't manifest a lot in competition debate, but it does in life. Many are those who prefer to not have to justify what they do. After all, doing is 9/10 of the law or something like that. The execution frame assumes that if you aren't hesitant, if you know how to pull the trigger, you'll be fine. The early bird gets the worm, and talk is cheap. The early bird gets the worm. Talk is cheap. Let's get her done. You're overthinking things again. That's the assorted SC bullshit. Singularity. The notion that a given course ought be pursued because now is the tipping point, or because Y is key to X, are arguments that operate in the frame of singularity. The best link story is the correct one. Conflicting link stories are perceived as wrong. In reality, most impacts in complex systems can't be causally reduced. Singularity prefers determinate answers and complete explanations that resonate as true. Thus, another manifestation of this frame is the rejecting of a multi-pronged approach, workaround solution, or the operating in a state of imperfect conclusion. Frames of singularity are part and parcel of criteria. When debaters say, Judge, X is the most important impact in the round, quote unquote, they expect all parties to accept the implicit frame of singularity as being the preferable frame to use when trying to reach conclusions. Frame of representationalism. Representationalism is the notion that inclusion and equality are implicit goods, and thus this notion runs afoul of other implicit frames frequently. Representationalism views claims not as matters to be legitimized by absolute relativism, but rather through linkage to consensus. Data on agreement, though, is pursued within the implicit frame, and therefore things don't link meaningfully to the claims for others operating under different implicit frames. In other words, it's not seen as warranting in debate, really. An appeal to popular sentiment. In other words, an appeal to popular sentiment is not generally viewed as a legitimate way to warrant anything. No, that's right. No, stupid Google Docs. Data on agreement, though, are pursued. God damn it. Data on agreement, though, are pursued within the implicit frame and therefore don't link meaningfully to the claims for others. When those others are operating under different implicit frames. To summarize, or it's better than in other words, summarize, an appeal to popular sentiment is not generally viewed as a legitimate way to warrant anything. The frame of originality. Originality manifests the implicit frame of preferring alternatives to that which has been done before. It makes arguments of inherency and underestimates the risks of untried approaches to things. Arguments that display this implicit frame are rare in competition debate, but include, we ought not limit carbon emissions because solvency will arrive in some manner that we don't anticipate yet. Or, and carbon caps comprise a very poor workaround kind of solution, and because of the harms implicit to carbon caps, we ought to wait until we have a better solution. Okay. Reliability. I mean, the other thing about the frame of originality I just want to say is not in the book is you can see how individuals validate things on the frame of originality a lot. That's why so many products will have new written on them in big letters. Reliability. Reliability expresses mostly as risk avoidance. Untried prescriptions present potential harms from unintended impacts. Reliability favors that which is known to correlate in the status quo over that which potentially may correlate with greater strength, but which will usually produce ancillary and unintended outcomes. This frame assumes that concrete, established, and understood solutions are preferable to experimentation. That'd be SI frame. More on RA and AR. RA, relative absolutism. This is TE. This is TI. So under the frame of relative absolutism, words are absolute in their expression, but relative in their meaning. So whenever someone says something, those words have precise meanings in that context. They are unchanging meanings, just as the weight of a 1 pound brick is unchanging. However, in another context, one might define the word differently and thus offer that this time the brick is 2 pounds. Once agreed upon, that's what it is for the duration of the exchange. The reality of the brick is just a status that's absolute within that frame reality, which itself is a brick to be defined for the purposes of making arguments about the relationship between bricks and reality. To summarize, because that's not very clear, to summarize, all right, requires statuses within a flow that's frames plus blocks. Summarize, all right, requires statuses within a flow to link to each other sustainably without creating contradiction. RA does not require any verification of objective data about the physical world This is so because does not require any verification about objective data in the physical world. Instead, it treats language it treats communicated advocacy as something that needs to be validated low resolution. Which allows certainty and to validate it accordingly at the expense of descriptive accuracy physical at the expense of accordingly RA acknowledges that any given status, any truth status, assigned can attain the status of true through agreement regardless of the accuracy of the statement as measured against the physical world. I'm still not sure that's clear, but it's a little more clear. Absolute relativism. The meaning of something is absolute to the particular parties and is distinct from the definitional constraints of relative absolutism. Thus, people often say things like, well, I know I said it that way, but I mean something else. Or you don't get what I mean. I'm just not expressing it well. So if you're in an absolute relativism frame and you say those kind of things, what that means is you're assuming there's a meaning outside of the definitions of words. And this is what I was trying to get to eventually here, and we finally got to it, which is explaining to Raphael and other TE users themselves. This explains to you who you are and why you are the way you are, just as relative absolutism explains it to me. So it's not the case that that meaning exists outside of words. Okay. RA says if you mean anything at all, you present that meaning in static words so that others can glean the information you convey, scrutinize it, and determine statuses against other such words. Whereas absolute relativism says, no, words are how I attempt to express meaning that authentically exists beyond words. It doesn't matter how relatively absolute your conclusion is, because it's not absolutely relative to me or other people. So, of course, this is not a good frame of reference. Absolute relativism is the wrong frame of reference for any kind of policy question, and it's the right frame of reference for any kind of personal interest questions. So if there's no conflict of interest, so to speak, in other words, if your position on a given, your position in society or something doesn't create a conflict of interest that has some sort of moral indication that you must detach your interests, then for most of the time, most people are acting out of their own interest. In other words, I'm eating lunch not for any reason other than to satisfy my own hunger, not for to create world peace or something. It's my own well-being is a value in and of itself. Well, let's look at debate impacts and criteria. The status quo. The arguments we make here in competitive debate produce tomorrow's common argumentational usage. There is a genuine trickle-down effect in the marketplace of ideas when ideas are genuinely good. So it matters a lot how we debate in competition, and it matters a lot how we debate others on the internet and in other public spaces. Quality argumentation. The best arguments have multiple qualities. They're concise. They appeal to a universal and unquestioned truth as people understand it. They analogize soundly. They're logically valid. They resonate with people's authentic attachments. They display concern for the common welfare. They virtue signal. And they legitimize against a concrete, measurable effectiveness. Judging considerations. Competition debate, however, favors some of the virtues and counter-values others. A proper judging of a round, in fact, ignores some aspects of arguments entirely while affording others great significance. Logical validity is a necessary but insufficient burden, typically, while measurable effectiveness is often determined in convincing the judge to vote for you. Lay judges will often vote with their authentic attachments, so most debaters explicitly display concern for welfare at least in lay cases, in case they get a judge like Judy's mom who feels so strongly about this issue and doesn't get that you're screwing over competitors who worked hard at their sport. The more lay the judge, the more necessary to rely on empirics because the absolute relativism of their judging metric implies a frame of empirics, which is a particularist kind of substantiation. It implies that that's preferred reflexively by that judge. Actual harms in the real world are weighted more heavily than are threats to principles or to the integrity of a system's grammar. So it is that with lay judges, appeals to conditionality-based decisions, that's not standing, which means this is unwarranted, so it falls too, things like that, are less likely to attain the correct result than are appeals to emotion likely to attain the wrong result. The resonance of an argument with an individual operating under an absolutely relative frame is to the actual experience of individuals and often to that individual, not to its legitimacy against other static word objects in the round as it should be. This is one of the risks of having unqualified judges. The debate can be a way forward. The debate community has within it to affirm the good as defined through the implicit value of adversarial rhetoric, namely our best practices, the subjecting of claims made to scrutiny, and motivated attack. That's that bad ideas don't get affirmed into actual policy. This is why AF has the burden. This is why we default to neg if AF fails to meet that burden. I'll repeat it. Because to subject claims to scrutiny and motivated attack guarantees that bad ideas don't get affirmed into actual policy. And that's why in life, we all agree the person making the claim has the burden to substantiate it, not the person negating the claim. Metaphysical evolution. Human understanding grows cross-generationally, and this evolution reflects in our argumentation. Identity politics comprise the authentic rejection of an unjust status quo in the absence of a widespread incorporation of a good way to attack that injustice. We see those argumentation blocks break apart now as the implications of their inconsistencies make them lose ever more rounds over time. And that argumentational truth will trickle down from debate to the rest of the world. Wrongness facilitating apologism. The real source of the injustice always gets away scot-free when the good guys chase down the wrong suspect. In this instance, as in every instance, injustice manifests because the ends have been used to justify the means. If they weren't used for such, they wouldn't enter into the discussion at all. The positive obligation of debate. Thus, debate's future and duty is the annihilation of utilitarianism from serious conversation on public policy. We fulfill this duty along two lines of legitimization. Foremost, the ethical discussion always ends with the utilitarian side grasping to behave as a real normative framework. It can only give us the moral status of an act in hindsight. It might prescribe action according to a best estimate of outcome, but that's the second problem. Those kinds of predictions are absolutely relative. My prediction is legitimate only on my hopes and guesses until and unless I appeal to empirics. And that's where the evil creeps in. Predicting that this or that will change, this or that change in law will save lives, neglects to presume that vastly more vectors come into play than can be causally reduced in that fashion. It further avoids that those vectors produce outcomes measured in many different units, important to many different people in many different ways. To measure only those impacts you want to measure is to render empirics meaningless in drawing conclusions about a thing. Note, I wrote this 2 years before COVID. But you can see exactly what I predicted here. There you go, COVID. Alt of alts, death to the PMT calculi. Impact calculus. The traditional impact calculus is that commonly employed in policy debate. Probability, magnitude, and time frame. This calculus continues to be used in many rounds today. The appeal of it is that it affords the competitor a tighter frame in which to put together a case, and it gives the judge a common unit of measure upon which to decide the round. The primacy of this calculus in debate for a long time reflected an implicit frame which suggests that looking ahead by extrapolations is a good way to make decisions about what action ought to be taken now. This still resonates as true for many, many, many people. The reason it resonates as true is because for individuals, when they are acting as individuals in pursuit of their own interests, it is true. That is how you should measure impact calculuses, when you are legitimately engaging argumentation or thoughts about a totally subjective matter. So, individual agency. Individual agency expresses best when the proactive aspects of the self adhere to the conclusions of an interested calculus, while the constraining aspects of the self adhere to the conclusions of a disinterested calculus. In other words, because I love my brother more, it's okay that I save him first before going back for other kids trapped in the fire. But it's not okay to use another child as a fire shield to protect my brother, knowing the other child will get burned. The decision to act in support of one interest is acceptable provided it violates none of the constraints that are affirmed by the disinterested calculus. To summarize, the constraints must come before. To summarize, the constraints must be determinate definitionally before any action is taken. It's not much better to attempt and fail to use the other child as a shield. Even if the other child is unharmed by your actions. No, that is a word. It's funny. Google Docs has this thing where it says my word determinate is wrong. It's misspelled. You must mean something else, like determined or something. And so then I shared feedback with Google. I said, determinate is a word. It means that which resolves the question. That which dissolves the question decisively. Resolves the question decisively. And then it said, thanks for your feedback. Your suggestion has been ignored. What it meant was the suggestion it put there on determinate has been ignored. But it read like, thanks for your feedback. We're ignoring you. Your suggestion has been ignored. Already? You've already ignored it? I just sent it. To summarize, the constraints must be determined definitionally before any action is taken, or else the constraints don't comprise a normative framework. It is not much better to attempt and fail to use the other child as a shield, even if the other child is unharmed by your actions. I guess I just say it is still bad. It's still bad to attempt and fail. Groups and the public sphere. In the public sphere, individuals carry out the will of the group, thus deferring their agential ownership somewhat. Not deferring. Thus, yeah, I guess. thus delegating their agency somewhat. It makes sense for each individual to seek specialists to perform specialized work that an individual does poorly, perhaps cannot do it all. It's a way for the individual to get stuff he wants I usually put it. To get veggies with plowing any fields. Get veggies without planting. Naturally, most folks don't attend to that which they've delegated. It is safe when delegating to individuals because individuals can be held to account. Every expression of the group is actually an expression of an individual who has attained agreement from enough of the group for that person's expression to be adopted as representative of the group. The more autocratic the group, the fewer people who can successfully get the group to adopt a narrative. So in DPRK, where autocratic group, for autocracy in groups, autocratic group dynamics is maximally realized. One person sets the narrative, all others must echo it. Cooperation between individuals and the governing group reportedly produces a hybrid policy that balances competing interests. However, no such policy should be affirmed unless it upholds against the constraints of disinterest first. Just as the risk of burn to one's brother doesn't justify the burning of another child, so too does the act of compromise between individuals pursuing their particular interests not justify the abdication of each cooperating individual to adhere to the constraints that of disinterested disinterest. The constraints that uphold here's the constraints. Here's the constraints respect the constraints, the negative constraints, the constraints of principalism all right, it's like that. Just leave it like that. Principalism is not spelled right. Principalism. I don't think there's any vowel there. Okay. It's not okay if the federal government sends aid to the president's hometown and not the more damaged and needy town next door just because the president likes his hometown more. This continues to be true even if we point out all the good done in the president's hometown and measure all the ways in which the other side doesn't really need help, and regardless of any metrics we present at all. It's wrong because it's an application of an interested calculus where only a disinterested calculus is morally permitted. In other words, he's doing the job of a public servant. So this is an example of why principalism needs to be prioritized, but policymaking is and legitimizing. Thus, it is that to wisely determine public policy, we must negate the subjective and the interested in our consideration. Governance is foremost the custodial work of having a monopoly on use of force. That a proposed application of that force be just ought to be a necessary criterion for consideration, but but for it to be insufficient, establishing the fact is insufficient to adopt it. Empirically supported outcomes, purportedly to be attained in the world of the affirmative after the advocacy becomes policy, always manifest an interested subjective calculus. The process of utilizing such evidence begins at the conclusion sought to be sustained and works backwards to find supporting data. Empirical substantiation is inherently a subjective advocacy because objective analysis acknowledges the limits of prediction within a chaotic, complex, adaptive system, and because objective analysis deals with things that are definitionally so. Empirical substantiation is the selling of a linked story to justify something. If the action prescribed didn't need to justify some transgressive elements, then it wouldn't need to rely on empirics to outweigh the harms it necessarily created in hopes of the benefits it speculatively pursues. The realities of affirmation. The affirmation of any advocacy also affirms the implicit frame of that advocacy. Thus, if we affirm that which justifies means by appealing to ends, we also affirm that manner of decision making. Each of us has a duty, however, to constrain ourselves to those limits established by universal principles. In keeping with universal limits. To claim otherwise is to claim that sometimes it's okay to unjustly commit non-responsive violence against some people. Almost none of the debaters who advocate government force to further purportedly just ends, while ignoring that justice itself is a process critique, would be comfortable actually doing the job of the legally empowered individual who sticks the gun in the non-transgressor's face and forces them into a cage. If we did that work, we'd all feel the injustice of our own behavior and be sickened by it. But, of course, as those debaters who are inclined towards the utilitarian side tend to ignore that. Takeaway: until we as a community acknowledge that our own reliance on empirics, predictions, and the balancing of interests necessarily produces a discursive environment in which such aggression necessarily produces the apologia for such aggression. Until we acknowledge that our own reliance on empirics, predictions, and the balancing of interests causes produces is fine. Until we acknowledge that our own reliance on empirics, predictions, and the balancing of competing interests produces the apologia of aggression, we will continue to reinforce the bad reasoning that enables transgressive governance to persist. Well, I'm then fixing that pointlessly. That was a good use of time, Eric. No, it wasn't, moron. Why are you fixing that old thing? Why are you doing that? What's wrong with you? Can Krishna Sarmapagu is a who man. Yes, Raphael, she's a who man. Hey, Raphael, I'm back. I was typing something. I was busy. I was making. I was tidying up my bag of truth that I was going to give you. So anyway, I looked through that bag of truth that I handed you, and there were a couple things I had to fix. Anyway, you can reread it now. Am I on speed? You mean the movie with Keanu Reeves? Where they're on the bus? No, I'm not on that bus or any other bus right now. I am on amphetamines, though, yes. Okay, yes, I'm on drugs. That's fine. Fine. Whatever, Aaron. Fine. God. Stop making me admit I'm taking drugs. You know that doesn't look good. People are all like, yeah, but you take drugs, Eric. And I'm like, so, God. God indeed. I like you and you like me and it's them. Bum 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 bum. I'm watching the chat again. I was drifted off into my work. Yes, I like what that thing says there. It's like it's so presentient about COVID. It's like I could totally have written that as a response to COVID. Maybe the Holy Spirit made for this moment to come for you to be told about Jesus Christ. I pray and hope you become a believer. It's essential. Can Krishna Sarmapagu, let me tell you what I think about Christ and Jesus. It doesn't matter to me at all whether you agree with me. I do care about you, King Krishna Sarmapagu. It's not that I don't care about your immortal soul, but I would say that in general, I find it wicked to suggest to people that their metaphysical well-being is at stake if they don't agree with your magical thinking advocacy. I don't like that. When did I get my Adderall? I got it yesterday. No, 2 days ago. Yeah, I did say that. You got me. Raphael, you got me pinned down. You're quite a pain in the ass. Sure as shit. You want to do it right now? You want me to type right now? Well, I'll leave this stream. We'll go to the room, and then we'll start a new stream with the streaming software so that I can get the video conference room. That's what Jesus said. Yeah, in my mind, Eric's Jesus has this to say. Don't even sweat it, y'all. I have no desire to be worshipped. But, if you want clarity about fundamental values, it's pretty straightforward. Obey the negative prohibitions. Seek magical help for the positive indications. If you want to call whatever magical help you're seeking, many-armed goddess lady, you call it that, that's fine. Since I died on the cross, I have decided that, usually golden calves are fine. My dad was a little bit fussy about the whole golden calf thing. But ever since he had me, he's really mellowed. He's really mellowed out. And I was recently chatting with him up in heaven, and he indicated to me that golden calves, schmolden calves were his exact words. So, golden calf it up, Can Chris San Pagoo. Ain't no shame in the game. Your gods have multiple limbs. They are hybrids between elephants and people. That's fine. It's more. It validates more on any grounds than Christianity does. Okay, I think it's fair to say that Hinduism scores more NE points than Christianity does. Extremely weird. Hinduism is weird, very interesting. It's like somebody said, "Hey, let's make up a bunch of random shit." And there's one guy that says like 8 arms. Really? Yeah, and she's half elephant. Really? Yeah. And there's another god who's got the head of an alligator and the body of an egret. He's always falling over. He's got 42 fingers on each hand, and they call him Alagrit, the god of reptile birds. My impression of Hinduism. No offense. Hopefully you're not easily offended by blasphemy. I do tend to be a little bit blasphemous towards, including my own religious beliefs, not just other people's. Although yours are much more appropriate to blaspheme because they're wrong. You're spiritually wrong. Your inner spirit is sick with the evil of wrongness. Okay, you believe in the wrong God. There's nothing worse you could do than that. That's the worst thing you could do. Don't believe in the wrong God. No, fuck. God damn it. Now we've lost Can Krishna San Pagoo. An eternity of torture she's going to get now. I was hoping to hang out with her in heaven. Couldn't convert her. It's like, you got 100 short years, and then somebody doesn't listen to you, and they're stuck in the fiery flames of hell for the rest of eternity, and you never get to see them again. Even if I get a pass to go down there, it's so goddamn depressing. I don't even want to see Can Krishna San Pagoo. I walk in, I'm like, hey, girl. She's just sobbing, please, the torture is endless. Let me go. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to visit you anymore. That's what you get for being Hindu. Eternal pain, eternal torture, lake of fire, okay? What is that demon? Does that demon stick those hot pokers into you like that? Wow, that is rough, Can Krishna. Well, but look who's next door. It's your multi-armed elephant goddess lady. She's right next door to you. That must be reassuring. Do you pray to her when you're being tortured? Oh, she's screaming even louder than you? Oh. I had no idea there was actually a multi-armed elephant lady. So you guys weren't bullshitting. You did derive that from something real. Okay, what am I doing here? Copy. I'm copying this link. Okay, all right, you, Raphael. There. All right, so I'm going to end this stream now, and I'm going to stream with the other software. So I would like for people other than me to ask Raphael questions. I want other people's questions. I ask questions all the time. Can Krishna San Pagoo, we love you too. Okay, you are loved. You are cared for here. We all wish good tidings upon you, good fortune, and a happy, fulfilling life. You know, I know that you and I disagree about polyamory, that you think you're going to be happy in a 12-person relationship, 10 of which are men. It's just you and your sister wife taking all that dick. Think a little bit more about that before you engage in that, okay? Because I think you're being a little overly ambitious. That's a lot of penis, okay? Anyway, I'll see you later. I got to go argue with Raphael now. I'm going to start streaming right now again, so I'll see you in like 5 minutes.